By the summer of 2010, I had become obsessed with answering a simple question. Why do some people end up loving what they do while so many others fail at this goal? It was this obsession that led me to people like Thomas, whose stories helped cement an insight that I had long suspected to be true. When it comes to creating work you love, following your passion is not particularly useful advice. Following your passion is not particularly useful advice. Well, that is an excerpt from Cal Newport's book called So Good They Can't Ignore You. And welcome to episode 7 of the Good Reads podcast. And today we are going to go through Cal Newport's book, So Good They Can't Ignore You. If you listen to episode 5, we did Cal Newport's book, Digital Minimalism. And this one actually was written before it. And Cal Newport is a computer science professor. He got his PhD from MIT, and he's written some pretty powerful and helpful books. And this book is all about our mindset towards work. And this book is kind of built on the premise that old adage of, just follow your passion, do what you love, and you'll always love what you do, or money will follow your passion. That whole kind of line of thinking, he really argues against in this book as a wrong approach to our careers. And I think what you're going to find in this book will really be helpful. It will be empowering, and maybe it will give us a new mindset to approach the work that we have. He says this: the narratives in this book are bound by a common thread, the importance of ability. The things that make a great job, I discovered, are rare and valuable. If you want them in your working life, you need something rare and valuable to offer in return. In other words, you need to be good at something before you can expect a good job. And so this is the premise of the book, that, we always are kind of maybe looking for that perfect job. We're focusing on the things that we don't like about the work that we do, we don't like about our job. But he offers a different approach to really finding work that we love, and it's a little bit counterintuitive. He says, it's my hope that the insights that follow will free you from simplistic catchphrases like follow your passion and do what you love, the type of catchphrases that have helped spawn the career confusion that afflicts so many today, and instead provide you with a realistic path toward a meaningful and engaging work life. So he divides the book up into these different rules. And rule number 1 is don't follow your passion. And he talks a lot about this passion hypothesis. Follow your passions. Passion is the engine to your life. Passion for your work is all that counts. He quotes Steve Jobs' famous valedictorian speech at Stanford, where Steve Jobs says, you got to find what you love. The only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking and don't settle. And in the first part of his argument, essentially he says that although he thinks Steve Jobs live the truth of this book, that he actually didn't follow his own advice. And I find this really freeing, because I know so many people that wouldn't maybe say their job is their passion, and they feel like they're missing out on life. Or maybe you've kind of struggled in your work to, find something that you really feel deeply passionate about. And what Cal Newport is going to argue is that we've kind of been fed this wrong information about meaning, about work, and about passion. And he begins to explain it. In the next chapter, he talks about how rare passion is. And he quotes this great newscaster that was being interviewed by journalism students. And the newscaster said to him, they were kind of asking him, how do you become great at radio and great at journalism? And he says, the key thing is to force yourself through the work. Force the skills to come. That's the hardest phase. And his whole idea was that you have to push yourself to develop skills that may not come naturally. And that's what really ends up creating a career that you love. He says compelling careers often have complex origins that reject the simple idea that all you have to do is follow your passion. So what he's going to say really is ultimately passion is developed through competence. that you rarely just begin and say, okay, this is what I love to do. This is what I want to do for my whole life. And you just have this beautiful match that's perfectly made from the beginning. But he's going to argue that that's not really how it works, and that shouldn't be our expectation. And more often than not, that kind of thinking will leave us dissatisfied in our careers and our work. And so he goes through the science of passion. And Cal Newport, because he is a professor by trade and a PhD, he has a lot of just different studies, different academic journals that he refers to empirically verify the ideas that he puts forth. So number one, he says, career passions are rare. And he cites this study. I thought this was interesting from 2002, and it was a bunch of students from Canada. And it was discerning if they had passions and if they did, what they were. And sure enough, the students did. 84% of them had passions. But here's what's interesting. When you see what their passions were, here's what the top 5 from this study was. Number 1, dance. 2, hockey. 3, skiing. 4, reading. And 5, swimming. And Cal Newport says that less than 4% of these identified passions had any relation to work or education, with the remaining 96% describing hobby-style interests such as sports and art. So again, the idea is if we're telling people to follow their passions, and you're like, well, my passion is dance. Well, there's not a tremendous amount of career opportunity in dance. Sure, is there some career opportunity? Yeah, but it's probably the top 1% of people who are interested in something like that. So his point again is just how misleading this, what we might say is a common sense idea, really is. His second conclusion is that passion takes time. That passion is something that actually gets developed as we stay long enough to become good at what we do. He cites another researcher who she says that the happiest, most passionate employees are not those who followed their passion into a position, but instead those who have been around long enough to become good at what they do. So their passion came from their competence. He says passion, number 3, is a side effect of mastery. So this kind of same idea, and he cites Daniel Pink, who wrote a great book about finding meaning and joy and happiness in our work. The book is called Drive. But in the book Drive, Daniel Pink says, here's the 3 things that really create motivation in people for work. Number 1, autonomy, the feeling that you have control over your day and that your actions are important. And he has a lot of statistics and studies about how autonomy is one of the best things that employers can give employees. Sense of control of their schedule, sense of control of their workflow, and a sense that what they're doing actually matters. The second big thing is competence, the feeling that you're good at what you do. When people feel like they have a skill set and they're competent in it, it creates a great sense of meaning. And lastly, relatedness, the feeling of connection to other people. And those 3 things are what really makes work meaningful. But notice what is missing in there is that whole narrative of passion. So then he goes on and he takes it one step further, and he actually says that this passion hypothesis is dangerous because when you're overly focused on it, it will actually make you less happy. He says the more focused we are on loving what we do, the less we end up loving it. Because then when you are always asking yourself, do I love this? Is this my passion? You tend to focus on all the things that you are dissatisfied with. It turns your attention that way. So, most people, when they kind of make happiness one of their main goals, they never actually achieve happiness because it's that same thing. You're asking yourself, am I happy? Am I happy? Am I happy? And then you tend to realize your unhappiness in different things, your discontentedness with things to a larger extent. So again, the whole idea is just passion is the wrong way to think about it. So he says rule number 2, the big rule number 2 then is be so good they can't ignore you. Be so good they can't ignore you. And this is my favorite part of the book, and I think the most helpful part of the book. He calls this the difference between the craftsman and the passion mindset. And so here's what he says. He says, I want to introduce to you two different approaches to thinking about work. The craftsman mindset, a focus on what value you're producing in your job, and the passion mindset, a focus on what value your job offers you. So I hope you heard the difference in that. Most people adopt the passion mindset, but in this chapter, I argue the craftsman mindset is the foundation for creating work you love. So let's dig more into these because I think these are so helpful. The whole book is built on this interview that Cal Newport heard with Steve Martin. Steve Martin, the great actor and comedian. And the interviewer asked Steve Martin, what advice do you have for aspiring performers, people that want to do stand-up comedy, want to get into acting like you? And Steve Martin said this. He said, nobody ever takes note of my advice because it's not the answer they want to hear. He said, what they want to hear is, here's how you get an agent. Here's how you write a script. But I always say, be so good they can't ignore you. Be so good they can't ignore you. Said that's the key. And this is what this whole book is built on. Be so good at what you do that it gives you the opportunity for the work that you really want. And being so good at what you do is what will actually create the passion and the desire and the love for what you do, like we all probably aspire to in our life. And he breaks us down in, I think, a really, really helpful way. He said, whereas a craftsman mindset focuses on what you can offer the world, the passion mindset instead focuses on what the world can offer you. He says there's two reasons I dislike the passion mindset. The first is this: when you focus only on what your work offers you, it makes you hyper aware of what you don't like about it, leading to chronic unhappiness. That's what we were talking about before. So the more I focus on what my work has to offer me, it makes me hyper aware of what I don't like about it, and it leads to chronic unhappiness. Second, and more serious, the deep questions driving the passion mindset, who am I and what do I truly love, are essentially impossible to confirm. Is this who I really am? Do I love this? They rarely reduce to clear yes or no responses. And in other words, the passion mindset is almost guaranteed to keep you perpetually unhappy and confused. That is so powerful to me. So what he's saying is that it's really hard to answer those questions with clarity. Is this work line up exactly with who I am? Is it what I truly love? Do I love this? Is this who I really am? You can drive yourself crazy with that kind of thinking. I know I have before. And what he says is it's not helpful. And it will always make you approach your work from this insecure place. And that's what the passion mindset does. And so the whole time also, you're not focused on getting better necessarily at what you do. You're really focused on what your work has to offer you. Now, the craftsman mindset is completely different than that. And he says it's completely liberating. He says this: it asks you to leave behind the self-centered concerns about whether your job is just right and instead put your head down and plug away at getting really good. No one owes you a great career. It argues you need to earn it, and the process won't be easy. And there's something that is inspiring about that to me. In other words, stop thinking about myself and start saying, what skill set can I develop in this role that I am? And how can I offer something beautiful to the world? And that is the thesis of the craftsman mindset, right? I'm not going to sit there and think about all the ways that I don't feel like my work is giving to me what I think I deserve or what I think I should have. Instead, I'm going to spend my time getting excellent in some certain areas that I think will add value to the world. And when you think about your work that way, then it becomes a place of tremendous learning, of tremendous growth, and of tremendous opportunity. And so this next part, he begins to talk about the power of career capital. He says the importance of the craftsman mindset, arguing that the traits that make a great job are rare and valuable. Therefore, if you want a great job, you need to build up rare and valuable skills. Be so good they can't ignore you, which I call career capital, to offer in return. So if you want a great job, you have to have something great to offer. If you want Steve Martin's life, you have to have Steve Martin's skill set. If you want Steve Jobs' life, you have to have Steve Jobs' skill set. And that's how you think about career capital. And then it changes the nature of the work that we do, because we see opportunities now before us. We see that every day jobs that maybe before were meaningless are giving us this opportunity to create and nurture a new skill set. And I love thinking about it that way. You know, I love the opportunity I get every weekend to prepare a sermon. And there's been different times in my work where I've been frustrated by that, because it's like every week, no matter what, Sunday is coming. I have to have something to say, and I want it to be good. But when I think about it from the craftsman mindset, is every week I have an opportunity to develop great study and research skills, which I think are highly valuable and applicable to a lot of different areas. I have the opportunity to develop public speaking skills, which are very valuable in almost every industry. I have the opportunity to grow in my own personal development as I read and study and do things like this podcast. And so when I just look at the craftsman side of what I do, my potential for growth and the work that I have is tremendously high. And if I can keep growing, then it's going to eventually keep creating more and more of a great scenario as I have more career capital to offer. So I think that is such a powerful thought. Now he says there's three scenarios in which the craftsman mindset doesn't apply. He says, number one, the job presents few opportunities to distinguish yourself by developing relevant skills that are rare and valuable. So you have no opportunity to really develop skills. Like maybe if my job, I had to dig holes every day in someone's backyard, that's not really giving me a lot of opportunity to develop any meaningful skills. It's like, okay, that doesn't apply. Two, the job focuses on something you think is useless or perhaps even actively bad for the world. So, you know, a company that you think is actually causing harm to the world, doing shady things, right? Doesn't apply there. Enron, this doesn't work there. Three, the job forces you to work with people you really dislike. So, you know, the people around you don't want to be around, then maybe it's time to look elsewhere. But if those three scenarios don't exist, then maybe you're not in a bad place. And maybe the work that you're doing could actually become far more meaningful to you with the craftsman mindset. And maybe it's not the job that you hate. Maybe it's just been your approach to the job and how you think about it. And you've been in the passion mindset instead of the craftsman mindset. So again, I think that is so very powerful. Now, he goes into much more detail about developing the craftsman mindset. And I just want to hit a few points before we close. One of the big things that he says about the craftsman mindset is the practice of deliberate practice. And that is a term from some more modern psychologists, Andre Erickson, Jeff Colvin. They talk about this whole idea that deliberate practice is where I'm working on developing a skill and I'm practicing in a way that is stretching me and I'm getting deliberate feedback. So deliberate practice is not just going through the motions of, let's say, practicing guitar, but it's practicing guitar in a way that's going to stretch my ability beyond what it is right now. And it's also going to give me immediate feedback so I know if I'm growing or if I'm not, if I need to adjust here or adjust there. And that's how we really get good at things. He cites this 10,000 hour rule. He says the idea that excellence at performing a complex task requires a critical minimum level of practices comes up again and again in any study of expertise. In fact, researchers have settled on what they believe is the magic number for true expertise, 10,000 hours. And it's not just 10,000 hours of mindless practice, but of deliberate practice, where we approach our job with a thoughtful way of getting better. And we keep at it, working again and again and trying to grow. And, that can look very different for you and for me. One way that I try to practice that a little bit is after I preach a message, I try to spend some time watching it, taking notes, what went well, what didn't, where was I awkward in maybe my mannerisms, or, where did I fumble a little bit in that. And it's a way to give myself some very immediate feedback and then points of action that I can really, really work on. But, whatever your role is, figure out what deliberate practice might look like, and then make a commitment in whatever skill you might want to grow in that's connected to your work, that you're going to put the hours in to become better. And when you see it that way, then you begin to see the day as you're not wasting your time, but you're building career capital, which again, the whole thesis is if you build career capital, you are inevitably going to create work that you love, because the real meaning of work comes not from aligning our passions perfectly, but becoming good at what we do and developed and having good relationships with those around us. In 2007, Charlie Rose interviewed Steve Martin, and Steve Martin explained his strategy for learning the banjo. He said, if I stay with it, then one day I will have been playing for 40 years. And anyone who sticks with something for 40 years will be pretty good at it. And so I just want to end today by saying, hey, whatever work you're in, I want to free you from the passion mindset, and I want to challenge you to adopt the craftsman mindset. And what skill set in your current role can you work on today? Can you be deliberate because you see value in this skill set? And can you start working at it to try to get better? And imagine over time how that will add up and what opportunities that will create in the future. Thanks so much for tuning in.